to use this as your opportunity to run for a break or the fridge or whatever, please feel free to use the time as you see most valuable. Shabbat Shalom. This week we begin reading from the third book of the Torah, the book of Leviticus, the book of the Levites, the tribe of the Levites, which in large part deals with the sacrificial worship of God commanded of the tribe of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, the Levites. The book takes its name because the performance of sacrifices was given to that tribe. Aaron, Moses' brother, and Aaron's offspring are raised, or were raised back in the book of Exodus, above all the other Levites in the family to a new status as Kohen, which we translate usually in English as priest, but perhaps better as sacrificial officiant. But despite the fact that Aaron and his sons are now given an exclusive franchise in the sanctuary and later the two temples in Jerusalem to conduct the sacrificial rituals, so much about the ancient mode of worship, animal sacrifice, is built around the idea of separate, unique individuals showing up, each in person. In English, we refer to the animal, grain, and liquids presented in the sanctuary as sacrifices or offerings. But the Hebrew term is korban, and it implies something altogether different. Korban tells us that the offering brings us closer to God. It's from the root karov, kuf resh bet. Even though the Kohanim oversaw the procedures, you yourself could not delegate the task of showing up. You could not delegate it to your assistant, nor to your spouse, nor to your parent, nor to your child. You yourself had to make the time. And by the way, the korban had to be in your personal possession for 3 days, but that's another story. At the appointed hour, you brought your korban to the Kohen, the sacrificial officiant, but you yourself had to place your hand on the head of your korban, assuming it was an animal, and rest your body's weight upon it, somatically connecting the offering you had brought. Physical distancing was an impossibility. Of course, this wasn't a daily or weekly ritual for the average Israelite. While the temple still stood in Jerusalem over 2 millennia ago, our people made Chag, pilgrimage. You can hear the Arabic word Hajj in there, 3 times a year to bring their required offerings: Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, in the spring, in the early summer, and in the fall. Like the impending festival of Passover, Chag HaPesach, many of us today are accustomed to a, shall we call it, traditional minhag, our custom of traveling on a modern family pilgrimage to join up in some central location to observe this festival today. But unfortunately, we won't be making that pilgrimage to visit family, not this year. Our offerings, which are still intended to bring us closer to the divine and to one another, will have to work differently this year. We will not be able to embrace or hold the hands of the many whom we love. You know, the ancient korbanot weren't only an attempt to bring human beings karov, closer to a transcendent and incorporeal God. They were also national communal gatherings. They were annual, scheduled opportunities to reinforce human communal connection and identity. But when the temple was destroyed and the korbanot ceased, the rabbinic sages responded by instituting a radical innovation. They dispensed with the need to gather in Jerusalem, and they allowed for public worship without the korbanot in every and any place that Jews lived and could gather a modest quorum, a minyan of 10. Worship was now permitted. As we read in the Babylonian Talmud, Rabbi Elazar said, "Doing righteous deeds of charity is greater than offering all of the sacrifices." As we read in the book of Proverbs, doing tzedakah and mishpat, charity and justice, is more desirable to God than sacrifices. In this decision to allow widespread worship outside of Jerusalem, the Jewish diaspora was transformed and invigorated. It was a radical but necessary departure from tradition. The desire to come close to God and one another was always on the mind of the sages, as it is on our own minds today. How in radically changed circumstances, we who so are accustomed tradition to the way it has always been done, how with our synagogue shuttered can we come close to one another and to those brief encounters we sometimes feel with the divine? In part, I've said the answer is that this too shall pass. We will return. Like the exiles returning to Jerusalem from Babylon, and in far shorter time than their 50 years of exile, we shall return to our sacred quarters here at Brooklyn Heights Synagogue. But in the meantime, our telephones, our smartphones, our tablets, and our computers shall have to serve us as we seek to come closer to one another, but also closer to that divine spiritual power that still has the ability to reassure and strengthen us at this season. All of us, for the weeks to come, will be on a learning curve, but with practice and trial and error, we will come closer and closer and closer, bringing our own korban, Kain Yehi Ratzon, and Shabbat Shalom. Typically, after a drasha on a Friday evening, I invite people to share responses with me. I'll invite, if you want to email me some thoughts or comments, please do. I won't see them till after Shabbat, but I'd be interested in your thoughts and reactions. We are going to turn our thoughts now to those who are in need of healing